right. So I finally got my 4000% Enrage Amascut kill yesterday on Thursday the 20th, which was just a few days after the initial release. So I just want to share my POV here and talk a little bit about the experience as a whole. It ended up being a pretty hard-earned kill with about 20 total hours going into it, with various teammates and different team compositions. We all tried out different combat styles, different EOF specs, different roles, and there was a lot of learning and trial and error that went into getting this kill, which was a lot of fun along the way. There was also a lot of community learning, which was really cool to see. I often find myself personally feeling like I'm walking on eggshells with some of the community, particularly the high level PVM community, and hopefully maybe one day we'll all have good relationships again, but it was very fun to tune in to some other big streamers like Eva Lucario and Raw's race team streams, or Omid's ESPN style coverage stream, and get little glimpses of good strats or some interesting theory crafts using some obscure items from chatters, for example. It really does take a village to get these crazy feats fully dialed in. 4K was a surprisingly big step up from 2000% Enrage. So much so that before the update came out, I had originally had the hope that we were going to be able to get our kill fairly quickly within a couple of hours and then help anyone and everyone get their 4K title for free on stream in a 4+1 carry format. But the difficulty really surpassed a lot of our expectations. I think it's definitely the hardest of the 4000% Enrage bosses by a pretty wide margin, but it feels so rewarding when you start making some meaningful progress. Since getting this first kill here, I've actually gotten multiple kills as a couple of different roles, so I've got some good perspective on the boss now, and right now I have the mentality where I really just want to keep improving as much as possible and trying to help out as many pals as possible to get their titles as well. So I'm really looking forward to continuing the grind here at 4K Amascut. Hopefully it does also get to the point where I can host some events to help viewers as well. I think that would be really awesome, but just for now, I'm focused on improving and helping any and all of my friends and friends of friends. I think that's a really good way of improving and getting lots of practice hours here, as well as expanding the network of like-minded community gamers. So if you're trying to host 4K and you're watching this video, if you need a fill for 4K, feel free to shoot me a message. My PM is always on. Anyway, looking at this first successful kill, my Grimoire does run out of charges altogether pretty early on, which was quite unfortunate, but hopefully my metrics won't embarrass me too badly. Apologies to my teammates there, but yeah, I've got my Grimoire filled back up to 24 hours since then. In these clips though, I am doing the West Outside role, and you can see my inventory is kind of ridiculous, filled with a lot of nonsense switches. I have been experimenting with some different setups in a lot of these hours. I tried some Mage Necro hybriding, some classic Mage Melee hybriding, and even some Mage Melee Necro tribriding. So nothing I'm doing is really super optimized yet, but just kind of fine-tuning and adjusting little things with each and every hour. A classic 2K Enrage team will typically be running 4 Mage Melee Britters and 1 Necro Camper. I do think that at 4K, most teams will probably want to keep that same team composition, but I also think that there's probably some merit to having at least one other person bringing Necromancy if possible. So maybe as other players continue to explore some of these ideas, we might end up seeing the ideal team composition being something like 3 Mage Melee Britters, 1 Mage Necro Britter, and 1 classic Necro Camper. As much as I like to follow established metas and learn from better players than myself, I'm not a sheep either. And I do like to have my own fun and experiment with some of my own ideas like this, even if they end up looking silly on screen or they don't end up working out in the end. Ultimately, looking back at this kill specifically, I don't know how much the Necromancy actually helped out our team. I didn't really make great use of it on P2 and 4, where even though it has potential to help AoE the extra gorillas, I think magic ends up doing more damage. If you have one strong Necromancer, that's probably perfectly fine for P2 and 4. But I did get some big AoE threads abilities off on the P6 clones, and that's where I think the Necromancy setup might have the most potential, but we'll talk about that when we get there in the kill. Putting my Necro nonsense aside, the core of my preset is mostly standard Mage Melee hybrid stuff. I made a few small concessions, like getting rid of the Reaver's Ring, which was probably a mistake. I also got rid of Gloves of Passage in favor of Necro gear, Staff of Light EOF, and Criploom gear. The Criploom gear came in so handy for P6 and P7 in particular. I really think that having Criploom is going to be worth it for anyone and everyone who does go for 4K. You will of course still want to have your Tumikins armor, because you really don't take that much damage as a DPSer in the first 5 phases, or at least nothing that you can't comfortably soul split back up from. But phase 6 clones and P7 obliterates hit so high that Crit Bloom's survivability is definitely more valuable than Tumikin's high damage. So far, what's been playing on screen hasn't been too extraordinarily different than 2K Enrage. The DPS pile has been Voking Bend the Knee, there's been some more Gorillas and Crocs, and higher damage numbers overall, but so far it's been pretty similar. Phase 4 and beyond is where the challenge really starts to ramp up. Probably the most interesting modified mechanic is the chain rooms green shields respawning after a certain period of time. So you can't just willy-nilly throw scarabs and take your sweet time killing the chains. You have to be really coordinated the whole way through this phase. In this clip, Accident and I had some slight miscommunication with each other, but ultimately what we found to be pretty effective was to have the inside role player throw their own scarab and the outside role throw their own scarab in as well. So at that point, there'll be 2 scarabs on the inside. The player who gets there first will first throw their scarab at the warden immediately, and then wait until the warden is about half HP or so, or maybe even nearing the death mark range. That player will then also throw the second scarab that just came in from the outside player at one of the chains, again, once that warden's HP is already really low. That should maximize the lifespan of the scarab before it explodes, as well as maximize the DPS window that is available on the chain before the shield regenerates. While all of this is happening, the base tank player is getting 2 scarabs for both sides, and it's often lined up for us that those 2 scarabs would be coming into the portal rooms right around the time the first chain is dying. So we can immediately throw both of those new scarabs at the remaining 2 chains, and each player on the inside can then dispatch a chain quickly. This phase 4 was one of the first big hurdles for a lot of us. The timer before the insta-kill is so short, and the timing on the respawning shields is also pretty short. So getting that whole strat down and building the team synergy, especially as you go with new teams, was definitely a big challenge. Phase 5 ended up being another pretty interesting twist on what we're used to at 2K and below. So you're not allowed to charge one single altar battery at a time. You must at minimum have 2 altar batteries fully charged before you can click Tumikin and start the name calling portion of the phase. On top of that, you now need a minimum of 3 green tank rolls, who will take dramatically increased damage from those green blasts. So in order to make this as safe as possible, we're all going to use Immortality at the very start of the phase to block the damage from the scarabs that are exploding right at the start. That ends up being a lot more safe than Barricade, since these scarabs will actually pierce through and damage you through Barricade. Plus, it means that you would have Barricade available to safely tank a green blast if you desire. Once the Immortality does proc, we'll have 2 players on either side keeping the obelisk's HP at 0. These obelisks will heal up unbelievably quickly, and they hit really hard. So it's super important that they're always kept dead. In the meantime, the other 3 players are kind of standing in the middle right in front of Amascut, and they are going to be killing the 3 sets of feline ox that are coming up the stairs. And we are purposely delaying charging for a couple of minutes, so even though this is slow, this is a really safe and effective strategy. This lets everyone kind of catch their breaths, soul split back up to full HP after that immortality. Also lets everyone kill all of the felines so that they will not be sniping our defensives like Resonance or Disruption Shield from any of the green tanks. So again, it just ends up being a brilliant, smooth, safe, slow, and steady strategy. I did end up having the easiest roll this hour. I was just solo charging, so I was just focusing on keeping my obelisk down, but I'm setting up to do a big berserk at the same time whenever the name calling portion begins. The gorillas will come out at a certain point near the end, but they're pretty trivial. They'll easily be held in place with an ice barrage, which lasts almost the perfect amount of time to click the button and instantly despawn those gorillas. In the name calling section, we've had some teammates discuss and advocate that it's more important for the Necromancer, who typically provides the least amount of damage, to completely ignore Amascut and just focus on keeping the obelisks bloated and ideally even dead. The other 4 players can focus on doing big damage with their berserks and exakills. Those obelisks are really nasty, like I said earlier, and they can easily hit upwards of 6,000 damage, so it's super important to either have that Necromancer on top of them or use some big AoEs like Hurricane or Meteor Strike in your berserk whenever it will hit both Amascut and the obelisks. Now for phase 6, I think it was Wazzy's original day 1 team that came up with this really cool strategy that we continue to use in this hour, where the player who is randomly selected to jump up and kill the platform wizards will deliberately wait until all 5 players kill the big green core completely. The amount of black shield HP Amascut gains is directly tied to the amount of HP that the big green core has. So by getting the core extremely low and maintaining it at a low HP, potentially even using the obliteration special attack, we are able to keep that black shield HP from getting unnecessarily high. This strat keeps the black HP pretty much right around 1,000,000, plus or minus a little bit, which is pretty dang good. After seeing some day 1 teams try and deal with 1.5 million black shield HP, that looked really rough. So again, this is a slower, steadier strat that I think really paid off in the end. So really clever idea that they came up with here. Once that ball HP does get low enough and the player starts climbing, it is going to take quite a while for them to finish the climb and kill all of the platform mages. The platform mages have a lot of HP, like a silly amount. And since it takes so long, it is going to be really important for the glyph player to position themselves properly the whole time on the extremities of the glyph. If they were to stand directly on the middle of the glyph image, they would have to walk off the glyph too often in order to dodge the floor mechanics that are constantly happening, and they wouldn't be able to hold the glyph active, which pauses the insta-kill timer. So to hold the glyph active at all times, they're going to need to be on the far edge and alternating to the opposite far edge of the glyph while dodging in order to maintain that glyph activation the whole time. That's easier said than done in my experience, and honestly I kind of suck at glyphs, so I'm glad I wasn't responsible this hour. Once the climber player gets to their final platform mage, they're going to let all of us know downstairs so that we can use the Staff of Light EOF. We might even get a crit buff or a natural instinct off on the core. And that Staff of Light buff is going to reduce all melee damage by 50% for the next minute. And since the clones obliterate you with melee, it's going to really help. Once everyone gets their Staff of Light buff, full adrenaline, and the climber fully kills their final mage, the 4 players will go to the south of the arena and get ready to AoE down the clones, while the climber player is going to go melee distance to Amascut far away from us clone players, and they'll be ready to use a bunch of defensive abilities to tank Amascut for as long as it takes us to kill the clones. While killing clones, it is so important to use any and all defensive abilities while maintaining good AoE damage. Of course, the faster you kill them, the better. So this is where I thought that it might be an advantage to have that second player bringing Necromancy gear to get off a second Threads of Fate, before then switching to magic and getting some chain AoE abilities, which is what you can see me doing in these clips. You can also see that I like to switch to my Crypt Bloom pieces here and use other defensives like Reflect, Resonance, Disruption Shield, or Vitality Potion as needed to survive. Eventually, the clone players will get a little black bar above their head, and that bar is going to fill up with a green charging indicator. But before that charge reaches full completion, the players who have that bar above their head are going to need to zoom over to get inside the climber player's Light of Tumican shield. That's going to clear the charge bar altogether, but this is also a bit risky because Amascut is still using her auto attack, so by coming over to Amascut in that base tank player's shield, you might open yourself up to some risk for tanking an Amascut auto attack. So good communication with that climber player on which type of autos Amascut is currently using can be really helpful. That or just having overall high situational awareness in general. These clones are definitely the sketchiest and the scariest part of the whole fight though. There's just a lot of pressure at this moment after making it this far into the fight, and this part is just so dangerous and so punishing. But after managing to kill the clones, we all try to use Berserk, and we want to get through the black HP altogether if possible. So phase 7, we're going to remember to refresh Pulverize and Enfeeble, and play it in a very similar way to the Unorthodox feat, with a heavy emphasis on dodging and surviving. With good damage, we were able to get this done in 2 nerve-wracking but relatively simple cycles. You can definitely see in my second cycle that like my adrenaline, both in-game and IRL, wasn't really optimal. I was really nervous. I also got bad adrenaline, so my exekill spec was super late compared to the rest of my teammates. But it kind of looks like in the video my exekill was the killing blow after all, which was pretty nifty, and we ended up getting our first 4000% Enrage Amascut kill, with all 5 teammates surviving, which at the time I believe, was the first ever 4K where all 5 teammates survived. I think we were either the 4th or the 5th team overall to get a 4K kill, which is really cool. Both Wazzy and I reclaimed our Grandmaster status, which is also super cool, even if my personal broadcast got scammed. Pretty cool to game with Wazzy again after so many years, as well as all of these other gamers. I had my good friend A Accident on team, and some fairly new friends in So Rainy and MonkaG222. So I'm super appreciative of the invite and the commitment to grinding for this feat. It was a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll all be PVMing and doing more of this kind of stuff in the future. There were also a lot of other teammates that I've gone with that either haven't gotten successful kills yet, or were part of some of the subsequent successful kills. But we're all still grinding together, and they're all still equally part of this big journey here, so big shout outs to Hot Streak, Unsolved, Ark, Chikorita, Pedro, Lucius, and Enromear. Big thank yous to everybody involved in any capacity, from watching here on YouTube, on Twitch, chatting on Discord, or in game, you name it. It's all seriously appreciated. I really don't take any of my online relationships for granted anymore. But last thing for this video, I'm gonna quit talking here, but I will let my other POV from the second kill that I did, where I was on the east side role, play out now. Maybe it'll be useful or maybe interesting to glance at. It was also kind of a speedy kill, all things considered. And one last mini complaint even with that clip, but I also got scammed out of my Grandmaster broadcast once again on that kill, which was unfortunate. You can see my other teammate in that kill got his Grandmaster broadcast back, which is cool, worked out really nicely. Must have just been some weird bug. Would have loved to see a broadcast with my name, since Amascut and Enrage milestones don't have any broadcast, unfortunately, but it is what it is. Oh, and actually one last thing comes to mind, just for my own ego again here, but with this kill, I locked myself in as rank 1 rune score once again, at least until 120 thieving and future rune score updates come out, but I think that's doubly cool. It was a huge team achievement, a lot went into that, but also a pretty cool personal milestone there for me. Anyway, that's gonna be it for me. Thank you again, everyone. Much love, and see you again soon.